Well, everybody knows about Detroit's bankruptcy, but a new study of U.S. cities' finances reported in today's Wall Street Journal indicates that many of the 250 largest U.S. municipalities are perilously close to running out of cash. The median amount of cash on hand was equal to just 81 days of typical operating expenses. A city emergency requiring police and fire overtime could consume much of that in a matter of days. Some of the cities with the smallest cash cushions: Shreveport, Louisiana, with 10 days, Chicago with 8.7, New Orleans with 2.5 days, and Fresno with less than a day's worth. Here now to explain why the cities are so cash-strapped is Kil Huh. He's Director, State and Local Fiscal Health for the Pew Charitable Trust. Mr. Huh, welcome. Good to have you with us. How did cities get in this perilous state, and how bad is it?
Well, cities are still challenging, have many challenges ahead. They're still recovering from the Great Recession. Their revenue bottoms hit much later than the state and federal governments, which took place in 2009, and they're still struggling to get back on solid fiscal footing.
Why did their revenue hit bottom later?
Well, it's a function of the property tax. The property values are still struggling, as well as the lag in assessed values. And in addition to that, the state and federal aid was also cut during that time as well.
You know, Kil, I was so surprised to see cities like Chicago, New Orleans on this list, very close to running out of cash over the next couple of days. Is it possible they could become the next Detroit and go bankrupt? How bad is the situation?
Well, they're not necessarily running out of cash. What the studies measured was the fiscal cushion that they had, the reserve funds or the rainy day funds that they had in order to cope with emergency. That said, they are still struggling. But bankruptcies are very rare. I don't think you'll see Chicago or Shreveport, Louisiana become the next Detroit. Bankruptcy is often a measure of last resort, and it's something that most municipalities try to avoid.
You know, I read in the article that they recommended that Fresno, for example, should ideally have something like $10 million in an emergency fund. What is the typical cushion that a city you would recommend should have on hand to make sure that it can weather, for example, a weather emergency?
Well, every city is different, and what they need in terms of reserve is going to vary from city to city. But typically, the reason why cities are in the position they're in is that they had to tap those reserves during the worst of the fiscal crisis for these cities. And when they tap reserves, they often cut spending, letting people go, such as police officers, firefighters, and sometimes administrators. And then, when that wasn't enough, they raised taxes. So cities had many tools that they utilized to get through the worst of the Great Recession and the fiscal aftermath, but they're still recovering.
So how do cities get healthy again? We know that in Washington there's budget problems there. That trickles down to the state finances, and then of course it goes to cities. So how do you get out of this mess? And the economy's not growing much anywhere.
Well, I think you hit on a key point. Cities have their role in ensuring that they're on solid fiscal footing, but at the same time, they also need the economy to start growing again too. And part of what the states need to do is also think about the aid that they want to provide their localities. The level of money that often is given to states, which is typically about cities rather, which is typically about 1/3 of their budgets, have dwindled and are nowhere near pre-crisis levels.
All right, Mr. Huh, thank you very much. Kil Huh is Director of State and Local Fiscal Health at the Pew Charitable Trust.